Jared Dillian. Own your money. Own your life.
I'm Jared Dillian. This is the Jared Dillian Show. If you want to call to talk about your money, please call 844-305-7800. That's 844-305-7800. This is the Jared Dillian Show. We're going to talk about higher education. And higher education is, I think, at an inflection point. Or not, it's not technically, an inflection point has a specific meaning. It's where the second derivative of the function is zero. I think we're actually at a turning point, which is a local maxima, where I think that fewer people are going to want to go to college. And there's a lot of things going on. Demographically, last year's freshman class is the biggest class that's going to go through college possibly ever, and it gets smaller from here. I was born in 74. I was part of a very small generation. This is my generation having kids, and they're going to college now, and it's going to be smaller classes, and also fewer people want to go to college. There's been a 45% increase in people who don't think that going to college is very important just in the last 7 years. So people are not, it's too expensive. Duh. It's like the most obvious thing I've said all night. College is too expensive. But, demand has been inelastic for a long time, because if you want to go to college, the government will loan you any amount of money to go. So it doesn't really matter how much it costs. And but it does matter ultimately, because you have to pay that money back, and people are starting to get smart. People are starting to realize this, and they're looking for alternatives to go to. I mean, if you go back 100 years, college was sort of a finishing school for America's, cultural and intellectual elite. It was much smaller. Not this everybody should go to college stuff. And, and not everybody should go to college. We're putting a lot of people through college who shouldn't be going to college, and we're subsidizing it. That is my rant of the day. It's probably not over. I'm probably not done with it yet. 38% of parents with college-bound students aged 16 to 18 believe their child will pay more than half of their tuition and fees, which is up from 31% in 2018. So what we've seen is an increase in parents who believe that the kids are going to pay for college, not them. Interesting. Meanwhile, 28% of parents plan to cover the entire cost, which is down from 34% last year. And 65% of parents are stressed over having enough money to help pay for college, which is a 10% increase year over year. And 70% of parents say they're not limiting their child's choice of college based on price. Anyway, I do think that we're at a turning point here. And I think what it means for the higher education industry is that a lot of colleges are going to end up going out of business. And it's starting to happen. The small liberal arts schools are starting to go out of business, and you're going to see some state schools hit. And some state schools are going to require explicit financial support from taxpayers. It's going to be very ugly. So people are not going to want to pay for this. Anyway, how much does college cost nowadays? And it costs $21,000 for in-state schools, which is nuts. That in-state tuition is $21,000. And $48,000 for private school, although it goes much higher. I mean, I've heard as high as $75,000. And for $75,000, if you borrow that plus room and board and everything else, that's $300,000 a year. It's $300,000 for your college education. There is such a thing as a 529 or an ESA. I haven't talked about those in a great bit of detail. I have mixed feelings about the 529. I mean, yes, if you are going to save for your child's college, you should do it in a tax advantage fashion. You should do it in a 529. But I have mixed feelings about it in general, because because all college is overpriced, and just because an account is tax advantage doesn't mean that you should use it to buy something that is overpriced and overvalued. So it's not that I have any problems with the 529s. I just kind of have problems, saving up all this money for college in a lot of cases where it shouldn't be happening. So that means that for an in-state school, it's going to be $80,000 over 4 years, or for a private school, it's going to be $200,000 for 4 years. So what is the return on investment for that? And there's sort of this big backlash against humanities majors. Everybody says you should do STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I was a mathematics major, mathematics and computer science. And I'm not really a big pro STEM person. I think humanities majors are important. And by the way, the most powerful people in the world are not STEM people. They're humanities people. They're people who studied humanities and went to law school. They became lawyers, and then they run for office and they become senators or presidents. Not people doing math. I mean, Andrew Yang is kind of like the one counterexample, but it's not the math people. Math is great. It'll get you paid. You'll make a lot of money, but it's not. These are not the most powerful people in the world. So. I was a math major, and that's the best major in the world to be, because you can do absolutely anything. You just, there's no, you can do business, you can do engineering, you can do humanities, if you're a math major, you can choose anything you want to do. So I did finance. The guy that I worked with, sitting next to at Lehman Brothers for many years, he was a history major. I'm not like a super pro STEM guy. The major doesn't really matter if you're smart and motivated. And actually, I've known art and music people on Wall Street too, and they've gone on to do very well. But before your child goes off to school, you should have a conversation about what they want to major in and what they want to do in life, because the return on investment in that major could be really bad. And I actually, I think philosophy is also important depending on who's teaching it. But yeah, even $80,000 for in-state school means you pretty much cannot be a humanities major. It doesn't make economic sense. Yeah. There are armies of people out there making $150,000 a year coding. And the coding thing has become a little bit of a running joke on Twitter, telling journalists to learn to code and stuff like that. If you have the ability to program a computer, which is what they used to call it, computer programming. If you have the ability to program a computer, you will pretty much never not have a job. You won't have the highest paid job in the world unless you are a superstar, but you can have a very comfortable living. You can make $150,000, $200,000 a year as a coder. And I'm not sure that's a path that I would choose. Some of these people that work on teams for video games, like, that's incredibly hard work, and the deadlines are ruthless, and it's really tough. But if you want a good paying job, major in math and computer science. If you want to major in English, then you have to be a rock star and you have to get into Harvard Law. But if your kid does not know what he is going to do, my suggestion is that you major in math. It is the perfect major for people who don't know what they are going to do. By the way, I did fail to mention, community college is probably the sneaky way to get a cheaper college education. Community college, you go for almost free for 2 years and then transfer to a 4-year school. That's really the cheap way to do it, and I highly recommend you check that out. I'm Jared Dillian. This is The Jared Dillian Show.
The Jared Dillian Show.